The culture war has basically crushed the comic book industry over the years. And the weird part is, you don't even have to be a willing participant in the culture war. You basically get drafted into this stuff now.
The culture war leaves no one behind. You can't just stay on the sidelines. You can't just kind of observe and go, all right, well, I'm kind of cheering for one team, but I don't really care who wins. No, you must be an active participant. One side or the other will not let you just live in peace. I mean, we all know which side that really is, but for the most part, yeah, you can't live in peace. You have to be part of it.
Now, I find it from both sides. They try to make you pick a position and stick with it, and you can only be with that position. You can't see any nuance. Like, well, they got a point here, they got a point over here. You're one side or the other. And obviously that's kind of the big outcome that we'll get to. But these are 4 enormous reasons that the culture war has basically destroyed the comic book industry, really the fandom at large. The first big reason, replacing iconic heroes with new diverse characters. In efforts to diversify their lineups, Marvel and DC Comics introduced new characters to take over the mantles of established heroes. For instance, Marvel's all-new, all-different initiative featured a female Thor, a black Captain America, and a Muslim Miss Marvel. While these changes aim to reflect a broader range of identities, they sometimes led to backlash from fans who felt that beloved characters were being sidelined. As noted in a 2017 article on the movie blog, it quickly seems the entire line has swapped out the classic white characters for a wave of more diverse replacements. These things had happened in the past. You know, we'd had essentially a black Iron Man. Tony Stark was a drunk. Rhodey had to basically replace him temporarily. It all made sense in the storyline. So I think a lot of comic book readers had seen these things happen over the years. But then once they really started opening the floodgates, it became quite clear they weren't replacing these established heroes with newer, more diverse versions of them because of storyline reasons. They were doing it with a purpose, with an agenda in mind.
Not only is this not storyline purposes, this is leather-facing it, expecting the same respect that the original version got, even though this new version had none of the history, none of the experience, and none of the, I guess, cultural cachet that the original did. And it became clear that not only were they not going to be changing back, they were demanding that you treat these characters as if they had always been Captain America. It wasn't just riding coattails, it was taking credit for the work of everyone else. Cultural plagiarism, and any sort of criticism towards that, or like negative reaction where people went, okay, I get wanting to have the new female Thor for a little while, but you also want us to pretend like she's real Thor. Not only is she just as good, but you want us to say she's better. And any sort of criticism of her, the creatives and the publishers start lashing out. This isn't just normal. This is something new.
And it's not just a Marvel thing. DC basically did the exact same thing during 5G. We're replacing Superman with his son, John Kent, who needs to be gay. We're replacing Batman with Jace Fox because we need a black Batman. We're replacing Diana Prince, Wonder Woman with Yara Ford because now we need, an Amazonian Amazon. Now we've got Jackson Hyde as the new Aquaman. Got to have a gay, culturally diverse type of character. We got to throw in Joe Mullins as the greatest Green Lantern, even the multiverse's greatest detective, because she's got to usurp Batman in there. And this stuff was always rejected because there's nothing organic about it. And that was the really big problem, but they never ever try to solve that. They just keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
What we found out in the last couple of months with Doge and everything is that a lot of the cultural pushes throughout the US and the world have been essentially funded by activists within the US government using the USAID program to justify it. It's a way of trying to astroturf cultural engineering and social engineering.
And this also led to, basically at the same time, prioritizing message over storytelling. As the culture war intensified, the message became the overwhelming priority over storytelling, with writers pushing propaganda at the expense of engaging narratives, resulting in zero evergreen stories that could stand the test of time. Marvel's 2017 series America, starring America Chavez, is a stark example. Written by Gabby Rivera, the book focused heavily on identity politics, with America's queer Latina identity overshadowing any meaningful plot. The series was canceled after 12 issues due to low sales. Rivera herself leaned into the agenda, stating in a 2017 interview with the Mary Sue, "I'm writing for the people who need to see themselves in pages. I don't care if the old guard doesn't get it. The message is paramount at the expense of every other thing that comic books have ever been good at."
They had no pretense on giving a shit about trying to convince you of something. They just felt like if we just tell you it over and over and over, you are too weak-willed and pathetic to put up a fight. You're just going to accept it eventually. The beatings will continue until morale improves. You'd make an argument of, well, here's all these plot problems. Here's where it violates continuity. Here's where the art's just really wonky. And that doesn't even look like the way people act. That looks like a friggin' monster. The faces have no consistency. And the response you got, you're just racist. And we're sitting there confused as hell.
Well, absolutely. It wasn't just like LGBTQ minority stuff. Obviously, feminism was a big push for it. Do you remember Chelsea Kane and the reaction to her Mockingbird series?
In response to it, what did they do? They published an issue with that obviously antagonistic "Ask Me About My Feminist Agenda" t-shirt. And that almost became a rallying cry for the creators to stand up and go, fuck you people, to the actual audience.
That is the third really enormous thing where the culture war really destroyed comic books. It's the strained relationship between creators and fans at this point. As the culture war intensified, the relationship between comic book creators and longtime fans grew increasingly strained. Rather than engaging in good faith dialogue or listening to concerns, some creators openly dismissed or confronted their audience. A prominent example is Captain Marvel writer Kelly Sue DeConnick, who became known for her unapologetically a political approach, stating, "If you want to see angry feminists, then I will show it to you." She further told critics, "If you don't like my politics, don't buy my book," alienating the very fan base that once made the medium thrive. While this approach may appeal to certain readers, it created a clear line in the sand that pushed many lifelong fans away rather than bringing any new fans in.
These people didn't give a shit about how they sold, and the editorial department didn't seem to care either. Once they saw, like, oh yeah, you can antagonize and you're not going to get fired. You're not going to not get an assignment. In fact, you're going to get rewarded by a higher profile assignment. Not only did they stop worrying about actual commercial sales, they started going out and actively attempting to it. I mean, look, the comic industry is a bunch of followers, at least from the creative perspective for the most part. So it's a monkey see, monkey do industry. They were seeing all their colleagues being able to go out, antagonize fans, not give a shit about sales, not sell things, and then get rewarded by their publishers. They all started doing it.
They don't like the fans because they're bigoted, they're racist, they're homophobe, whatever name they decide to call them that day, but they also think that they're just better than them. Kelly Sue DeConnick thought, well, I don't need comic books. I'm just going to go grab Mr. Sue DeConnick, and we're going to go to Hollywood, and we're going to be big deals because I wrote Bitch Planet or whatever. Now, of course, she's crawling back to comic books today because that didn't work out for her, but she still thinks we're pieces of shit.
Whether comic creators ever really liked their audience in the past is kind of up for debate, but they recognize the necessity of at least playing nice with us because they were in a commercial fucking art field where you actually have to sell shit. So being antagonistic to the people that buy your stuff and keep you employed is probably a really bad career move. It was almost like they were using their time in comics to hone their propaganda skills so that they could then use them on a larger scale.
But the problem is, Kelly Sue DeConnick then moves over to DC Comics to take over an Aquaman run that was doing perfectly fine. Dane Abnett, not exactly an A-lister, Doc, wouldn't even call him a B-lister, more like a C or D-list type of writer, doing a good job on Aquaman. Kelly Sue DeConnick, supposedly an A-lister because she's a female writer, takes over the series. What happens immediately? 5,000 orders dropped the very first issue, and it dropped another 10,000 within 4 issues. Because she said, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book, and everyone took her up on that goddamn offer.
It was almost like if you actually sold comic books, we'd pay you less, and if you drove away readers, we would reward you with larger gigs and probably a higher page rate.
And then the final thing that this culture war has really done, it's created polarization within the community. What once united comic fans, debates over the best characters, story arcs, creative teams, has increasingly devolved into political infighting. Instead of bonding over Batman versus Spider-Man or Claremont versus Morrison, fans are now more likely to argue over identity politics, creator ideologies, and perceived social agendas. The result, a deeply fractured community where conservative readers voice their disagreement with new political directions. They're often dismissed as toxic or bigoted. For example, a 2023 article on CBR titled "The 10 Worst Things About the Comics Fandom" criticizes certain segments of the fan base for their resistance to diversity and progressive changes in comics, labeling these reactions as part of the ugly corners of the comic book fandom. In a lot of cases, the people on social media, the ones that scream in support of all this stuff, they appear not to actually be fans. They appear to be comic book pirators. They don't even buy the books. They're not collectors. They're not in there for the spec value. They're literally just there for the culture war. So they brought in a segment of fans that don't support the books, but they do argue and tell the people that are actually supporting the books that they're wrong and bigots.
I don't know what kind of business model that is. It seems like a quick way to starvation to me. But hey, what do I know? I just go and buy things.
But it appears to have been somewhat by design, at least. I remember Joe Quesada, the EIC at Marvel at the time, giving a no prize to a political operative that never liked comic books, that was literally only there to make people yell at each other. Remember that?
That blue-haired chick from Texas that wore the stupid wig. I don't remember her fucking name. That's how irrelevant she actually is to the comic industry. But the
Marvel EIC went out there and recognized her and said, "This is somebody that you should listen to. She gets a no prize."
The problem I think you end up with is that a lot of the folks that started coming into comics, the ones that they appealed to, that they tried to appeal to, none of these people understand, like, or have any concern about money. It's a business.
But these new fans don't have any care or concern about the characters or the history. No. Jim was literally on Twitter. I saw it. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Jim was giving out his opinions on the recent Superman movie clip that went out there. And he literally had a 19-year-old, him, give him the what to and what for on who Superman really is, despite never reading any of the comic books. These are the fuckheads that they decided to bring in to fight with the actual people that were supporting the industry.
But the fucking Reddit side of comic book fandom is like who they started trying to appeal to. And the other day, I'm pretty sure I just saw somebody asked, "What is Superman's kryptonite?" on there. And I'm sitting there going, are you actually fucking retarded? These are the people that they're appealing to. They don't understand why the actual audience that's been there and supported them and kept them employed for years, if you were to fundamentally alter the thing that you buy, and that's what was happening by fundamentally changing all the heroes. You were taking the existing audience, you were saying, hey, you better keep buying this. And when you don't, and when you realize, hey, we're changing everything, and if you point out that there's a problem and you walk away, then you're the problem, not us for changing the thing you liked.
And that's why I don't even engage really in any of these online conversations or debates, because I find them, at least 80% of them, to be completely inauthentic, rage baiting, trolling remarks from people that literally have no idea or interest or care in anything that they're actually saying.
No, they really do not. The audience that they decided to court had no interest in the actual fucking comics, just the messaging behind it. And that's not a fandom. That is, I don't know, a cult.
Yes.
Yeah.
A very interesting stuff about the downfall of comic book industry at the hands of the culture war. Obviously, the culture war has taken a lot of things down and split them into a million pieces. If you appreciate this, but you would like the full conversation, you do need to go to Think Critical Patreon, the Doc Unfiltered Show, because we did edit it down just a tiny bit here for the YouTube. Link in the video description. Hope to see you there very, very soon.